Hello everyone, let us study the chapter We Are Not Afraid to Die, which is a part of your book Hornbill in class 11, written by Gordon Cook and Alan East. So as you can see, first of all, before you go through these notes, you must read the chapter, alright? And that is when after that you come to these notes, okay? So the boat is Wave Walker. It's 23 meters long and 30 tons, weighs 30 tons, and it has been described as a wooden-hulled beauty, okay? The sailors on the boat are Mary, who is the wife of the writer, Jonathan, who is the son of the writer, he's 6 years old, Suzanne, who is 7, and the daughter, and the writer himself, who is a 37-year-old businessman, okay? They have prepared for 16 years for this journey, all right, which starts from Plymouth, England, in the month of July 1976, and its duration is 3 years. Okay, so from Plymouth for 3 years, starting in July 1976. What is the aim of their journey? The aim of the journey is to duplicate the round of the world voyage by James Cook from 200 years ago. So 200 years before this journey by Gordon Cook was done, James Cook had done a round the world voyage, all right, of the distance 105,000 kilometers. All right, so now we know the boat, the sailors, from where it started, the duration, when it started, the aim, the distance. All right, now let us come to, we're starting the story now, okay? All right, now we're starting with the first leg of the journey. Okay, they sailed from the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. All right, where is Cape Town? It's the southernmost point of the continent Africa. All right, so they sailed from the west coast of Africa to Cape Town, and there over at Cape Town, they got 2 more sailors aboard who were American Larry Virgil and Swiss Herb Siegler. Okay, so now the sail was from west coast of Africa to Cape Town, and now the sailors were Mary, Jonathan, Suzanne, the writer, and 2 more people who had gotten aboard, who were American Larry Virgil and Swiss Herb Siegler. Okay, and why did they come aboard with the 4 sailors who were already there, the family of the writer? They came over there so that they can help tackle the southern Indian Ocean. They can help Gordon Cook tackle the southern Indian Ocean. And the journey was pretty good. Okay, it was decent. There were not many storms and all. All right. So now we go to the second day out of Cape Town. Now they are going towards the Indian Ocean, southern Indian Ocean. All right. So on the second day out of Cape Town, there were strong gales. Okay, gales are very strong winds, and those went on for 2 weeks. All right. There were gales, and the gales gave rise to waves which were as high as 15 meters. That is what bothered the writer. Okay, that the waves were as high as 15 meters and they were reaching the main mast of the boat, Wave Walker. Okay. Then on December 25. On December 25, they have come 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Okay, and December 25 is Christmas Day, right? So their holiday was complete with a Christmas tree. So they had a lot of fun on Christmas Day. Okay, and by Christmas Day, they had come 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Now they are in the southern Indian Ocean. Okay, so now we know the first leg was pretty decent from where they went west coast of Africa to Cape Town, which is the southernmost point in Africa. Okay, over there they got 2 more men who were American Larry Virgil and Herb Siegler, who was Swiss. Then after that, then they started from Cape Town, and on the second day, after leaving from Cape Town, they encountered strong gales which gave rise to waves which were as high as 15 meters and reached the main mast of the ship, okay, or of the boat, Wave Walker. Okay, for 2 weeks this continued until on December 25, they had eventually crossed 3,500 kilometers. They completed 3,500 kilometers from Cape Town to the east of Cape Town. Okay, so that was great, a great milestone. And they also celebrated Christmas, which was complete with the Christmas tree. Okay, so that they had a good holiday. But then on January 2, they had extremely gigantic waves. Okay, they encountered huge waves when they were, they were sailing with a small storm jib and still making 8 knots. All right. So how they tackled this issue of the gigantic waves, what they did was they slowed down the boat. How did they slow down the boat? They dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy moving rope in a loop across the sun. Right, so on January 2nd, they encountered gigantic waves, okay, and they were already sailing, and they were still making 8 knots, all right, and sailing with a small storm jib, all right. And how did they encounter the gigantic waves? How did they tackle that? They slowed down the boat. How did they slow down the boat? They dropped the storm jib and lashed the heavy mooring rope in a loop across the sun. Okay, you don't need to learn the second point by heart, but if you can, well and good, okay. So they just dropped the storm jib to slow down the boats. Then, as precautions, they double lashed everything. They went through a life raft drill, okay, because there are chances, when you're sailing and there are such huge waves, gigantic waves you're encountering, and there's a possibility that you might die, right? So what they did was they double lashed everything. They went through the life raft drill. They donned oilskins and they had their life jackets on. All right, so great precautions. This is something which every sailor should do. Double lash everything, donned oilskins, life jackets on, and went through a life raft drill. So they did the drill. They donned oilskins and had their life jackets on. But then on the same day, January 2nd, 6 p.m., the sky grew dark. Okay, and then the author felt that an enormous cloud towered aft the ship. But it was a very weird realization that the thing was not really a cloud, but a wave like no other he had ever seen. Okay, the wave was 2x of normal waves, which was, twice of that of normal waves, the size. It was perfectly vertical and frightfully breaking crest. Okay, it had a frightful breaking crest. Crest is like a top part of the wave. Okay. Because of that wave, there was a tremendous explosion sort of a thing on the ship. Okay, there was green and white water and it shook the whole deck. Okay, and since the wave was so big, the author had accepted his approaching death already. Okay, and he was at peace. He was ready to die. And then all of a sudden his head pops out of water and he sees that Wave Walker is nearly capsizing. Okay, it had almost capsized when a wave hurdled it upright. Okay, that was a good thing because had the boat capsized, everything was over, right? The kids, Mary, Larry, Herb, everything was over then if the boat capsizes, right? But it did not capsize because a wave hurdled her upright. Then the wave, the waves which were there, they tossed the author like a raggy doll, okay, like a rag doll, from one part of the deck to the other part of the deck. And because of this, he had broken teeth, he had blood coming out of his mouth, okay, his left ribs cracked, But then eventually he found the wheel and lined up the stern. Alright, so the bad thing that happened was there was blood in his mouth, broken teeth, left ribs cracked, and the good thing was that he found the wheel and he lined up the stern. Okay, we'll revise this day again. Alright, but we're not done with it just yet. There's a lot more for the day January 2nd. Okay, then Mary appears, okay, and she shouts that we're sinking and the decks have smashed and we're full of water, so we sink now, we're dead almost, okay. So what the author did was he gave her the wheel, okay, to control the wheel. He saw that Larry, Virgil, and Herb Ziegler. Larry was American, Herb was Swiss. They were pumping water out of the ship like madmen. Okay, he has compared Larry and Herb to madmen. Okay, that is the extent to which they were desperate to get the water out of the ship. Okay, then the author goes to the children's cabin. Okay, and he sees that Sue's head was hurt. Okay, Sue had hurt her head a bit, and there was a big bump above her eyes. But what she said that it's fine, but my head hurts a little. Okay, and the author said that he did not have time to worry about bumped heads. Okay, that is how he is prioritizing saving everybody over helping Sue cure her bumped head. He had no time to think about bumped heads. So then after he has given the wheel to Mary, and Herb and Larry are pumping water and the children are safe, he goes and finds the hammer, screws, and canvas. Okay, what he does with the canvas, he stretches that on the gaping holes so that water does not come inside the ship from those holes. Okay, so the canvas is stretched. He used the hammer and the screws to stretch the canvas. Okay, the hand pumps which Larry and Herb were using, they were blocked, okay, because of the floating debris around the cabin. And there were two more hand pumps, but they were wrenched overboard. Alright, so the hand pumps which Larry and Herb were using, they were blocked, and the two more spare that the author had in his ship, they were wrenched overboard. Okay, but yes, and there was another pump, the electric pump, which short-circuited. So they've lost hope, but then eventually the author finds another electric pump under the chart room floor, and it worked. Yay, okay. Now, see, the event had taken place on January 2nd, 6 p.m. and it's almost night now when they're still pumping and steering and working the radio. Why are they working the radio? So that they can send Mayday calls. What's Mayday calls? Mayday calls are, just asking for help. Okay, sending calls to ask for help. But no one answered the Mayday calls, which was no surprise because, they were in the middle of nowhere and there was no one around for miles and kilometers. Okay. But when the situation was little to no under control, we saw that Suzanne, okay, she had two enormous black eyes, a cut on her arm, and her head swollen alarmingly. Okay, so Suzanne was really, really hurt. That time when the author went to the children's cabin and she said, my head hurts a little, that's all she said, right? But it was much more than that. She had a cut on her arm, her eyes were black and swollen, and her head was swollen also. And when the author asked her, why did she not tell him this earlier? She was a very, very smart and responsible kid and said that she did not tell him that earlier because she did not want to worry him when he was trying to save everybody. Okay, so this is all that happened on January 2nd. We can revise once. So January 2nd, we saw a number of gigantic waves, okay, which were uncontrollable. So we had to slow down the ship. Alright, how did we slow down the ship? We dropped the storm jib. Okay. Then, as precautions, we lashed everything. Okay, we double lashed everything. We went through the life raft drill. We wore our life jackets and we donned oilskins. Alright, but at around 6 p.m. there was such a huge wave. Okay, the author earlier assumed that it was a cloud, but it was actually a wave. It was perfectly vertical. Okay, 2x of a normal wave. The size was twice of a normal wave, and there was then a tremendous explosion on the deck. Alright, and also the fact that the wave had a very frightful crest. Okay, then when it fell onto the deck, there was green and white water and it broke everything, and the author lost all hope of survival. He had accepted his impending doom. Okay, he had accepted his approaching death and he was at peace, when all of a sudden his head popped out of water and he saw that Wave Walker had almost capsized. Okay, there was blood in his mouth, he had broken teeth, he cracked his left ribs, but eventually he found the wheel and he lined up the stern. Okay, then all of a sudden Mary comes and she says that, oh my god, we're sinking and the decks are smashed and we're full of water. Then the author gave her the wheel. Okay, and he saw that Larry and Herb were pumping water out of the ship like madmen. Alright, that's what he has compared Larry and Herb to, madmen. Then he goes to the children's cabin, asks the children, Suzanne and Jonathan, if they were fine. Suzanne had a big bump over her eyes, alright, but all she said was, my head hurts a little, and the author had no time to worry about bumped heads, so he went and fetched a hammer, screws, and canvas. He stretched the canvas over the gaping hole so that no more water would come in from them. Then, see, the hand pumps with which Larry and Herb were pumping water out of the ship were blocked. Why? Because of the debris which had to come inside along with the wave water, right? So, he found out that the hand pumps were blocked. He also found out that the two spare hand pumps they had wrenched overboard. Okay, so they were no longer to be used. The electric pump that they were using also short-circuited, but they were lucky to find another electric pump which happened to work properly. Okay, where was the electric pump found? Under the chart room floor. Alright, this much is clear, I hope. So, the wave had hit them at 6 p.m. and now it was almost night when they were still pumping, steering, okay, and working the radio. Why working the radio? So that they could, get an answer to their Mayday calls. Mayday calls, what are Mayday calls? They were simply asking for help. Okay, then someone please come and help us. Then, no one answered their Mayday calls, obviously, the reason for which we know. Obviously, they were in the middle of nowhere and there was no possible reason why someone would answer their calls from miles or kilometers away. Alright, so then we see that Suzanne has two big black eyes, okay, a bump. Okay, so her head had swollen alarmingly. What they earlier thought was just a head bump, it was actually something else which we'll discover later. Okay, but now we see that her head has swollen alarmingly, okay, and she has a cut on her arm. Alright, two enormous black eyes, cut on her arm, and her head has swollen alarmingly. And then when the author asks her why did she not tell him that earlier, all she says is, I did not want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. All of this happened on January 2nd. Now we come to the next day, which is January 3rd. A good thing about this day was that the water level was under control. Okay, and it was that much under control that they could take 2 hours of rest in rotation. Alright, and on January 3rd, they had survived for 15 hours since the wave had hit them. Alright, but there were so many holes and everything in the ship, in the boat Wave Walker, that the author knew that he could not carry it till Australia, which was supposed to be the next target. He was supposed to carry it now to the small islands in the vast ocean, okay, which he has referred to as pinpricks in the vast ocean. There were 2 islands, okay. There were 2 islands, which were about 100 kilometers east of where they were. One of them was Isle Amsterdam, which was supposed to be a French scientific base. Okay, alright, so that's where they're heading towards now. They're not heading anymore towards Australia, which was supposed to be their next stop, according to what Gordon, Cook, and Alan East had planned. But now they're no longer heading towards that. They're heading towards the pinpricks in the small ocean, which one of which is Isle Amsterdam, which is a French scientific base. Okay, not military, scientific base. Alright. And the sad thing about the day was that their auxiliary engine was out of action. Okay, so their auxiliary engine died. What happened on January 3rd? They had survived for 15 hours since the huge ginormous wave had hit them on January 2nd at 6 p.m. Okay, now they were heading not towards Australia but towards Isle Amsterdam, which was a French scientific base. Alright, and their auxiliary engine was out of action, it died, and the water level was significantly under control so that they could take 2 hours break in rotation. Alright, now we come to the next part of the story, which is January 4th. Okay. After 36 hours of continuous pumping, they were left only with the last few centimeters of water. Okay, they could finally see the floor of the ship now. Damn. Okay, they had pumped continuously for 36 hours after that wave had hit them on January 2nd. Okay, and even after that, the waves kept hitting them. So now, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, they were left with only last few centimeters of water. So now they were safe enough to hoist the storm jib. Okay, and that is when they had their first meal in 2 days. Okay, all the sailors had their first meal in 2 days, which was corned beef and cracker biscuits. Okay, wow. Then after that, okay, let's revise January 4th. What happened on January 4th? There, after 36 hours of pumping, they had finally, they were left with only a few centimeters of water. So they hoisted the storm jib again, happy now, okay. They hoisted the storm jib and now they were again at peace. Alright, but at 4 p.m. there were winds again, 40 knots. Alright, at 4 p.m. 40 knots of winds were there. Alright, and they also had their first meal in 2 days, which were cracker biscuits and corned beef. Alright. January 5, now if we move on to January 5, we observe that it's one of the emotional days of the trip, of the journey for the author, right? It was on January 5th that the author's son, Jonathan, asked him, are we going to die, daddy? Alright, he asked if they were all going to die. But then the author reaffirmed and said, no, we're going to survive, okay, we'll make it somehow. But then, see, the 6-year-old boy, he is so smart, he is so genuine, that he says, we're not afraid to die if we can all be together. You and Mummy, Sue and I. Sue is a short for Suzanne, alright? So, the 6-year-old boy says that we're not afraid of dying, daddy, if we can all be together, you and Mummy, Sue and I, alright? And this gave a newfound determination and motivation to the author that they had to somehow make it, alright? Then, we're given with a few details as to the author then went on to protect the weakened starboard side, and there was an undamaged boat hull facing the oncoming waves now, and they were also using an improvised sea anchor, alright? So, if you ask this question, what happened on January 5? The author's son came up to him and asked him if they were all going to die, but then he said that they were not afraid to die if they could all be together. Alright, and somehow they had to make it now. The author had found this newfound determination and a motivation to, protect his family, and then he went on to protect the weakened starboard side using an undamaged boat hull facing the oncoming waves and also an improvised sea anchor. You don't need to learn this, okay? This is just for your knowledge. Then we come to January 6th. It was on January 6th that the author did all his calculations and found, damn, that they are looking for a 65-kilometer island on a 150,000 kilometers wide ocean. Damn, okay. So he did all of his calculations only to find out that they were looking for a 65 kilometers big island on a 1,50,000 wide ocean. Then the daughter of the writer, who was Suzanne, came and gave him a card. Okay, in the front of the card, they had, it had caricatures of the family. Alright, and below that she had written, here are some funny people. Did you laugh? I also laughed. I laughed a lot as well. Alright, so this is what was written. And then inside the card, there was a message. How I love you both. So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. Alright, this also gave motivation to the narrator and somehow they had to make it. Alright. The sad part is that they had lost their main compass. Okay, and they were using a spare one, which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. See, everything wrong has to happen that time only. They lost their main compass, and the one which they were using had not been corrected for magnetic variation. Okay, so at about 2 p.m., the author asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. Alright, and with the conviction that he did not have, he said they must find the island by 5 p.m. if this was the right move, steer the course by 185 degrees. Then he went to the cabin and dozed off. Okay. He woke up at around 6 p.m. and then he had Jonathan and Sue in front of him. Jonathan said, can I have a hug? When he asked, why does he need a hug right now? Jonathan said, because you're the best daddy and the best captain in the whole world. And then, when the author was in this self-doubt that no, he isn't this time the best daddy or the best author, Jonathan and Sue said together and said, oh, we found the island, okay, and it's as big as the battleship and it's out there in front of us. And, shouting the word, what? The author went over and saw Isle Amsterdam. Okay, it was just a bleak piece of volcanic rock with a little vegetation on it, but still he has called it the most beautiful island in the whole world. Why? Because the timing at which he has found that island, Isle Amsterdam, he thinks it was very, very beautiful. Okay, when we need something the most, that is when we tend to appreciate it. Okay, that is when we call it beautiful. So there was positivity and optimism again. Then the author anchored offshore, alright, for the night. They rested during the night, and then the next day they set again for the journey, alright, to complete the journey. And there were 28 inhabitants. We must remember this. There were 28 inhabitants in the island. The 28 inhabitants helped the author and his crewmen, get ashore and set for the journey again. Alright. And with land under his feet, the author's thoughts were so full of Mary and Larry and Herb and Suzanne and Jonathan. Mary, because she was on the wheel for all those crucial hours. Okay. Then Larry and Herb, who constantly were, pumping water out of the ship, and they were cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress. Alright. And the 7-year-old girl, Suzanne, who did not worry about, who did not want to worry the author about her bumped head, which took about, several minor surgeries to repair, okay, which was, to remove a recurring blood clot between her skin and her skull. Alright, it was that bad. And his thoughts were also full of Jonathan, who was not afraid to die. Alright, that was it about the chapter. We will now do, we'll now learn the theme and everything. So the first theme is that human nature of knowing and taking on challenges. Alright, the second is human bravery, grit, courage, unity, and determination. Third one is faith in one's optimism. Fourth is sharp presence of mind. And fifth is qualities of a captain. Okay, giving motivation and taking motivation from his crewmen. Then a few of the key messages are: children show courage, patience, and perseverance. Adventure is a sense of achievement, joy of getting new experiences and out of comfort zone, which gives thrill and a feel good factor. Optimism helps to endure the direst stress. Alright, and in this story we saw close encounter with death. Kept their courage for they found strength in togetherness. Alright, spirit of human beings to face disasters. Start victorious with their courage, determination, and willpower. A treatise on courage and valor is this story, and a first-person account of an adventure ordeal. Okay, so these were the themes and key messages. Now I will give you a few questions for practice. The first one is: list the steps taken by the captain to protect the ship when rough weather began. To check the flooding of the water in the ship. Okay, so these are the first two questions. Third one is: describe the mental condition of voyagers on the 4th and 5th of January. Then give the shifts in the narration of each section, how the story progresses. Then describe Wave Walker. What were the first indications of impending disaster that ultimately struck on January 2nd? Why did the author undertake the sea journey? This is what I just shared with you. Okay, there's a thrill of staying out of your comfort zone and working hard, and there's a sense of achievement in adventure. Alright, and it gives you a feel good factor. Then what prep did the author and his wife make for the voyage? 16 years of preparation. Okay, they had tested Wave Walker in the direst of weathers that they could find. Then how did the children respond when Captain went in their cabin to comfort them? What problems did the hand pump cause? How did the author resolve them? Then what was the impact of children's behavior on the narrator? How did the first leg of the journey pass, and when and where they sensed the first sign of disaster? Describe the boat which was made for undertaking the voyage. That was Wave Walker, right? What happened at 6 p.m. on January 2nd? Justify the title of the text. Next question: I did not want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. What does this show about the speaker? This shows maturity, right? You can elaborate. This shows that she's a mature kid, unlike many other of her age who only know how to throw tantrums, okay, silly tantrums. Then the hurdles of life can be challenged if we have the confidence to make optimum use of our potential. Elaborate on this. So these are the questions. We now know the story, the themes, the key messages, and the questions and answers. So revise the story, okay, and all the best for your English preparation, okay.